Très
Ah
fort
oui, c'est
maintenant.
l'hiver pour vous. Ouais.
Mhm.
Bonne chance. Ici,
Feza is also here. Welcome, Feza.
Thank you. Hi, Lucy. Hi.
Okay, shall we start then? I will start recording and then Penny goes.
This meeting is being recorded.
hello. Hello.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Penny, are you okay to start?
Can you hear me now? Yes, okay.
Now, yes.
Yeah, okay. We start again, and I'm sorry for that. Something happened with the usual thing with the multitasking. Yeah. Okay. Can you hear me now? Yes, okay.
Now, yes.
Yeah, okay. We start again, and I'm sorry for that. Okay. Something happened with the usual thing with the multitasking. Yeah. Okay. Okay, can you hear me now with no background noise?
Yes.
Okay, I don't know what happened. Let me now try to find the slide to share. Okay, so can you hear me now with no background noise? I don't know. To find the slide. No, it's something's wrong. Share. I don't have it open. So can you hear me now with no background noise? I don't know.
Performance.
Yeah, okay. Yes, okay.
It's okay. I mean, let's go back to see where the Zoom is now. So I know where give me a second, because I left the Zoom. I'm not in the Zoom now. Okay. Oof. Yeah.
This is normal.
This is normal. Okay. I need, however, to see where it is. Okay. And
I can share the screen, Penny.
No, it's okay. I think I've got it. Okay. We start again, and I'm sorry for this. How say beginning start, but can you hear me now? Okay, is everything okay? Oh, fine. So I would like to welcome you all to the Power to the Commons, an opportunity to imagine another world, which is part of the Commoning Cluster of the AC School, an initiative of Arts Collaboratory that you will hear more about in a few minutes. What I would like to do at this moment is to welcome you all, but also the hosts and the storytellers, and also to give few information about the 90 minutes that this session will last. First of all, if possible, to mute your microphone while others speak. And for the audience, if possible, to write your question on the chat on Zoom. You will also see during this session a number of websites and links being added to the chat that relate to the conversation and the storytelling. And we will finish with a reflection about Power to the Commons and questions. So this is, to take you to the next slide, is first of all to welcome you all. Luciana Fleischman from Arts Collaboratory coordination team, and Alex Correa, who is next to me from Platohedro and the AC School. Today's storytellers are Alex first, who will take us through Platohedro and Commons and Buen Vivir, and then we'll move to Marion, Molemo Moiloa from the Ungovernable from South Africa, who was involved from the very beginning as an advisor and key member of Power to the Commons. Then Marion Louigrande from Thiossane in Dakar, Senegal, will give her own story from Dakar in relation to the Commons and Power to the Commons. And we finish with Feza Kayungu Ramazani Be from Waza from Congo DR, who will take us through lumcumbency and how commons are perceived in that particular region. The teaching schedule is an introduction, as mentioned just earlier, on Arts Collaboratory, AC School, and the Commoning Cluster, then followed up by an introduction to the power to the commons, and then the 4 storytellers that will focus on specific questions that we will show you later on the screen, and we'll finish with reflections, learnings from power to the commons, and questions from you, audience, and the closing check-in and information about the next sessions of the commoning cluster. I will just give me a second. Yes. So the floor is yours, Luciana, to tell us a little bit more about Arts Collaboratory and the AC School.
Thank you so much, Penny. I'm very excited to be here, and thank you so much for all the people who joined these sessions. We are very keen on seeing you also in the following sessions, and I'm gonna give a very short introduction to what is Arts Collaboratory and the AC School, like a bit of the background that where this initiative came from. So for those who are not familiar with Arts Collaboratory, we are a network of different art organizations, collectives, and ecosystems of those collectives and art organizations that started more than 10 years ago. And we are an ecosystem that connects initiatives from Asia, Middle East, Africa, and Latin America. And one of the things that connect us most is that we are art initiatives. We work for social change and the transformation of our context through actions that are interconnected also. And we work a lot with solidarity between the South and South. So this is a very tiny introduction about AC. We've been working together for a long time. We've been working internally for a long time and doing some assemblies, exchanges, residencies, collaborative projects. And after a long reflection, we realized it was very needed, even if we have nurtured ourselves a lot, we needed to open up more to the world. So this is one of the initiatives that are very guided by that intention of opening up and also sharing and learning from others and sharing some of the experiences we've done together and some learnings that came from it. So that's how the AC School comes from. And inside these initiatives of making a school and also unmaking the ideas of the traditional school is that a call for projects came last year, where we internally started asking about ways of building solidarity at the end of our world. There were like many proposals that came. We organized internally those proposals into 3 topics of clusters. I'm gonna mention which are these clusters briefly. One is the how to organize in terms of independent self-management. Another one is the commoning cluster that this initiative is rooted in. And another one is called land and pedagogies, that is related with also autonomy and fights for the land in different territories. So there will be like many activities that will be public, that will be for free also during this year. You're very invited to connect to them and learn more about them. I can then share some links where you can stay tuned to this programming. And well, we are inside right now in the Power to the Commons teachings, and it's a series of teachings that we called Commoning, an Opportunity to Imagine Another World. So do you want me, Penny, to also mention which will be the following sessions? or we don't have
Yeah, if possible, the topics, just briefly.
Okay. Do you want to share the screen with that, or I'll check it?
Yes, yeah, give me a second and I'll do that. Is the last one, so oops, this way.
Okay, yeah. So we are in the first session. The following one will happen in 2 weeks on July 18th, and we're going to talk about the South-to-South commoning beyond the word commons. We will bring stories from the Global South, reflecting what we understand as commons and the tools that activate commoning practices. Then we will have on August 1st, Commoning with More Than Humans, water stories that we can listen from more than humans and the environment. Then we will have Commoning Blockchain Technology on August 15, with transformative potential beyond individual applications, empowering grassroots communities and strengthening collaborative initiatives. After that, we will have on September 5th, decentralized autonomous organizations and the integration of DAOs and practical tools for communities fostering transparency. And the closing session will be together with the plenary of the AC School, so you might be able to gather with other people that will join this session from Arts Collaboratory, where we will reflect on learnings and unlearnings from the AC School teachings. These sessions will be also broadcasted on YouTube. You can find them in a link we will paste here, but of course, when you join the Zoom, you will have the possibility of interact a bit more. So thank you so much for coming. I'm gonna leave it here. If you have further questions, please do it in the chat. And I will leave you with Penny again so that we finally start this conversation. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Lucy, for sharing all this information. Give me a second to stop sharing this slide, these slides, and I'm going to another slide. Okay, here. Yep. So I start sharing another one. So to get you through a little bit the background of the power to the commons and how we came together. As mentioned earlier, we came together in 2019, just a few months before COVID-19, and this is an important point to make because the work we've done was not only remote in the sense that we are from different latitudes and places, but also that we had to experience lockdowns, different lockdowns, depending on where we were located at the time of the COVID-19. So a few things about the Power to the Commons. That's an initiative of AC, of Arts Collaboratory, and is a collaborative project between different art organizations included in Arts Collaboratory from Latin America and the African continent, but also this time including researchers and independent artists as well. And how all that started from a question here and where we are located right now in Colombia, in reference to Buen Vivir, which I'm going to explain in a few slides, and how can we basically think beyond a local and context, the concept of the commons and commoning. How could we basically think in that perspective from a south-to-south approach and consider how commons and commoning are understood and experienced in the case of different African context. So the project, as it's, you can see in this slide, is an explorative one, and it's seeking ways of practicing the commons within artistic forms. It's not just about to theorize, basically not to theorize, but how could we experience and practice the commons in our everyday lives and environments, but also to understand the specificities of the commons rooted in these various cultural, social, and geographical contexts. And we started, as I mentioned, working together in 2019 with the scope to present the work in Afropixel Edition 8, a festival in Dakar that you will hear more in later by Marion from Thiossane. And these groups and these initiatives, we thought of how can we consider the commons together. So the part of the commons are originally these three art organizations and non-profit organizations included: Platohedro in Medellin, Colombia, Thiossane in Dakar, Senegal, and Waza in Lubumbashi in DR Congo. And the coordinator of this project was Molemo Moiloa from the Ungovernable in South Africa. Now, the research team, apart from myself, was Dianamba Gabriel Dion from the University of Dakar, Diop, and Pierre Kahenga from Serdar Waza in Congo. And as mentioned, that is an initiative of Arts Collaboratory funded by Doen Stiftung in the Netherlands. As mentioned, yes, we started with the Buen Vivir. This is a lengthy text to go through, and we go even one step behind, looking not the idea of the Buen Vivir, but where Buen Vivir has originated from, and is from Sumakwase, is a cosmovision, indigenous, from Quechua and communities in Ecuador, and then expanded in Bolivia and Colombia. To say that in Ecuador and in Bolivia, they have incorporated the Buen Vivir concepts in the constitution, and I think, if I'm right, in Colombia as well. In a sense, it's about how to know how to live, living a good life, or good living. As in discussion I had with an anthropologist working with Quechua people in Ecuador, it's not about good life, but living good. And it's quite important because it's always in the making. So here you have the 13 principles of Sumakwase and how that are translated into also contemporary understandings and moving them from an indigenous practice that mostly are with the environment and natural landscapes within the urban context. So the key principles of Buen Vivir, which, as you see here, is good living or living well, is we can say in very few words, are those, or translated in contemporary context, from social justice to sustainability and resilience, spiritual and emotional well-being, but also harmony with nature, people, and more than humans, which is quite important in the work we do within the Power to the Commons. So in the times of the COVID-19, Platohedro specifically, and you will hear more from Alex, who is next to me, had to rethink about the Buen Vivir. And I have to say here that Platohedro incorporates Buen Vivir in their practice, artistic, but also way of living and working. And they had the moment to pause and reflect back on how we can reconsider the concepts of Buen Vivir, these 13 principles, not only within the team of Platohedro, but with the extended ecosystem, their ecosystem in the city and beyond, of artists and local communities, and to reflect together and think together around Buen Vivir. This is one of the inspiration of thinking about the Power to the Commons, which initiated the discussion on the commons and commoning and how we can bring those concepts into the African continent. This is, of course, you can find all this in to read in more detail, because there's a lot of writing, a lot of text, and how everything had been recorded for the Curating Common Wellbeing, which you will find on the website, a series of texts from thinking the principles of Buen Vivir from the Platohedro's point of view, but also how to build common well-being and how we can think with the more than humans as well, which is the homemade anomaly antenna. And finally, how to reflect and think together an opportunity to imagine another world, which is an ethnographic report on the principles of Buen Vivir. Saying this, and the discussion as mentioned, and that's the point of power to the commons, was how can we dialogue with the commons and how can we see this in different contexts. So along within the researchers team, there was Pierre Hengel, for example, who worked closely with the Center Waza and created a series of focus groups with mostly people in the communities of Lubumbashi and churches as well. Because one thing that was considered in the context, at least of the Francophone Africa, the West Africa, was that the commons and commoning are quite close related with spirituality included. So two concepts that came up in discussion was, of course, the one that is most known, Ubuntu or Bumuntu, which is a Central Southern African concept to describe I am because we are. But also what they found interesting is the Chemba Chanyi, and I'm sorry if I don't pronounce it right, which translates in free translation, what is yours is mine. So that was something that that they brought into the power to the commons for discussion that aligns very well with the work that Dienaba did in Dakar through, again, a series of detailed interviews with artists, activists, and community leaders to consider the commons. In the case of Dakar and in an extended version of Senegal, the idea was back into community and kinship and connectedness. And the idea that within Wolof, which is the main language spoken in Senegal, translates to family and kinship, we share with those we are related to. We presented this first stage of the Power to the Commons to the Afropixel festival in March, if I remember well, 2020, which was online. Usually Afropixel is in location in situ in Dakar, but due to the COVID, we were basically moved most of the activities, apart I think of the residencies, and you can correct me later, everything else was online. So here you can also get the link to the YouTube Zoom discussion where all of us came and presented the different parts of the research, but not only the issue of practicing the commons within the Power to the Commons. The second stage, and I will talk very briefly on this because this is something that we'll talk in more detail in the next session, the next teaching in 2 weeks' time. It's their second, let's say, journey or meeting, which in this case was in location. It was in Kassel in Germany, in Documenta 15, where we were invited to, as part of the Commons, to organize the Power to the Commons Assembly and 4-day series of events, internal for the group to meet, but also external to discuss commons with the general public of Documenta. And it was about the perspective of commons from the global south. In this particular, and I will get you through images, in this particular moment, apart from the initiatives and art organizations originally involved in the Power to the Commons, this time we invited the Common Life Project via the Ungovernable, Molemo, and in that there were a number of other initiatives from Africa, from Uganda, South Africa, and Zimbabwe, included in the discussions on how can we think collectively together about commoning practices. You will find more about in our website on the Power to the Commons, where we have text, reflective text, images, photos, videos, etc., that document the Power to the Commons assembly events in Documenta. But here you can see few slides with also what were the main goals of this assembly: to share experiences, of course, to develop explorations around Buen Vivir, Sumakwase, and Ubuntu, and to imagine through Global South perspectives on the commons, to develop radio and other tools to document, to develop creative responses, but mostly to connect with the broader ecosystem of initiatives, projects, and organizations from the Global South, and to create, of course, a lexicon and languages of commons from our context, but also languages meaning in the literal meaning of the word. So here you see our meetings. Also, as we say, with the ecosystems, we were hosted by other organizations and activities within Documenta. This is from MAMA, Más Acción, Más Arte, or the opposite. See? What does commons mean for you? For us, that was a public event that attended by quite a wide number of audience. Here with the audience discussing this, the commons, and harvesting. How can we basically portray and imagine the part of the commons, including more than humans, in this discussion, and the network and the roots and rhizomes that develop through discussion in these 4 days. And of course, we were practicing the 13 principles of Buen Vivir, of Sumakwase, how to know consciously to eat together, to dance together, to dream together, to think together, to work together. And here's more questions, and with our ecosystem, here are things from Ruan Grupa, if I'm right, and eating together. And of course, within the part of the commons, we had projects like Code as Commons that Alex was involved in, could tell us a little bit more. And Alex's project that he took forward, the Curating Common Wellbeing and the Antenna of Homemade Anomaly, and created an institute project, a series, kind of an antenna with speaking and in dialogue with the landscape in Kassel. And that's our last day, where we explore in more details and how we basically put more into the discussion on what is the space that we come together to talk and think and reflect together on commoning practices. And I think I'll leave it here, so because we have more to listen from the others than just listen to me. So I stop sharing. And as I said, if you have questions, please add them on the chat. And I think now the floor is yours, Alex. I need to mute myself.
Okay. Thank you, Penny. I like to listen all the thing about the commons and the part of commons and remember these moments. So nice for me. So thank you so much. Hello, everyone. My name is Alex. I am part of Platohedro, a creative and collaborative platform based in Medellin, Colombia. Today, I want to share a story, not just about a project, but about a journey of weaving relationship, learning from one another, and exploring what collective well-being means across the different territories. Our stories begin around 2010, when we in Platohedro started connecting with collectives and organizations throughout Latin America. By 2013, we were exploring the idea of the commons together with Pedro Soler and another cultural collectives in Medellin. We began hosting what we call commons roundtables. This early gathering helped us connect cultural practice with collaboration co-creation, and shared responsibilities. Over the following years, this seed grew into the deeper connection. We began working more intentionally on commons based in practice with Penny Travlou. Thus, through research, dialogue, and joint action, our participation in Arts Collaboratory, a network of social engagement arts space across Latin America, Africa, Asia, and Middle East, brought new dimension to our work, especially through the closer ties with peers from the African continent. Then come the pandemic. It was a time to share urgency, to rethink how we live, how we care for each other, and how we organize. Those long months invited us to pause, listen, and reflect. The beautiful principles of Buen Vivir or living well or good living become our compass during that time. We have a phrase encouraging the philosophy in our early connection across Latin America, where we learn from indigenous communities in the Andes region. For us, Buen Vivir was never just a concept. It was and is a way to understanding life rooted in balance, mutual care, and respect for all being human and not human. These principles become the grounding for a curatorial process. We call it curating common well living, the Penny told about. Finally, in 2022, after so much time apart, we were able to get in person again in Documenta 15 in Kassel, Germany, where Power to the Commons was brilliant and more. The Power to the Commons didn't start like a formal project. It emerged organically through the affection, shared interest, mutual recognition. This is a translocal process because it has always been about weaving between contexts, never imposing one logic onto another. Each organization, each person we meet along the way brought their own knowledge, their own way to see the world, and isn't to try to create a single definition of the commons. We made space to multiple knowledge, what we call the buen conocer or good knowing. One of the more important, powerful parts of the process has been our ongoing sub-to-sub or sub-to-sub dialogue, especially with the African continent. Through the Arts Collaboratory and other encounters, we began building relationship with people and collective in places like Kenya, Senegal, Congo, Uganda, and South Africa. We discovered the Ubuntu. I am because we are share deeper resonance with the Buen Vivir, while they're emerging from different stories and knowledge. Both philosophy emphasize relationality, community, and life in connection. This conversation has not only enriched our understanding, they have reminded us that collective well-being is not an abstract idea. It is something that must be live, practiced, and defend every day, especially in the world that often promotes individualism and competition. Of course, moving across territories and different stories and strongest broad challenge. When we view, for example, is deeply rooted in the Andean worldview, and we have to be careful not to universalize it, but instead become a limitation. It become a mirror, a way to ask questions about our context and to invite others to do the same. Is in the same when Vivir was both a grounding and provocation. It helped us hold space for different way, still returning nurturing and shared vision. So when we say power to the commons, we don't just mean resource. We mean stories, dreams, relationship, and responsibilities. We mean the possibility of building another world, or one where well-being is not a privilege, but a shared commitment. Yeah, I have more reflection for the.
Okay, thank you so much. Just a second to see the because it's good for. Give me a second. Thank you. Probably you need to mute yourself.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So give me a second to, sir. This was the question that was given to you, Alex, to respond. And thank you so much for getting us through Buen Vivir and how the South-to-South dialogue is important to consider this. The next, I think, person who is giving us a storyteller, is Molemo, where also you had a question to reflect upon, which is this one for the audience to have just a very brief look, so you know where these discussions and reflections come from. And I'll stop sharing, so I will give the floor to Molemo and to, yep, here you are, Molemo. Yes, thank you. Thank you for making it as well.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. It's lovely to be together again and to hear everybody sort of reflect on this. To be honest, I'd kind of forgotten that we started just before the COVID pandemic and all of the shutdowns. It's nice to kind of go back there a little bit. In terms of kind of where we started and why we started, I think a lot of that conversation was an interest certainly from my perspective around the contribution that Latin America has made to the broader global commons conversation. So I'm sure many in the room would know that even the word commons kind of comes from the north and the closure of the commons in what I suppose is England, and then what has been a kind of spread out experience throughout the globe, and an experience I think that both in Latin America and Africa has been the sort of extended version of what was started with enclosure of the commons through things like colonialism. And where there's been incredible value in the thinking around commons from where it started in the global north, I think there's been this extraordinary contribution of Latin America to really expand the idea of commons, which I think, Penny, you spoke to very much with Sumakose and Alex also, in terms of this idea of the commons as a way of being, emerging from these concepts of Buen Vivir and Sumakose. And I think what it's really done is move us from a space of thinking about commons as a concern of resource allocation and resource governance into this much more ecosystemic integrated imagination that is also, I think, has like a cosmological grounding. And I think the original conversations we were having was, okay, in Africa, we're kind of learning from this conversation that Latin America has brought to really expanding a thinking of the commons. And I think part of the question was, how is that being thought about in the African context? What might be the contribution from the African perspective? And I think we saw a lot of correlation in that this expansion into Buen Vivir, also, as you've already spoken to, Penny, was about language and episteme and spirituality and socio-historical context, and in the way that it had mostly been about economy when in how it had been conceived in the North. And I think we just felt a very strong connection around these ideas and trying to expand these ideas. And of course, then really thinking about how this connects with artistic practice and arts organizations, trying to do something in society, trying to contribute something to our contexts. From the African perspective, and I think my other colleagues can also contribute much more to this, I think at the time that we were speaking, there wasn't a lot. still isn't a lot of discourse on the commons. Where there was, it was mostly academic discussion, primarily on agriculture. And there's a very strong tendency towards the concept of the tragedy of the commons in relation to the African context. So commons was often framed in a negative sort of way, around sort of resource extraction or kind of imaginations of depletion of collective resources and like destruction of traditional modes of working. And so there was this very negative image of commons, except of course for Thiossane, who at the time were already sort of way ahead of all of us, doing really extraordinary work with Afropixel and had been doing many years of conversations that also did this intersection that I think connected very strongly with Platohedro around like bringing some of these ideas of tech, open tech, and the sort of collaborative agenda of technology into this conversation around commons in these two contexts. And so I think this is sort of how we started to think together. And that was where our conversation sort of started, that we were just really interested to learn from each other about these questions. And part of the conversation I had been having with Marion of Thiossane is they had already been working with Dianaba and DI, one of the researchers that Penny, you mentioned. And I think from those conversations had recognized that commons is not necessarily a very familiar word, but the practice was very present. And so some of what was needing to happen within the African context was, again, this question of language, to find the words that we are using for these practices. And they have, many words and the many ways of doing it. And part of what we were interested in was exploring these and sharing these. And of course, Africa is a very big continent. And so it's also very different, say, between South Africa and Senegal, which are very, very far from each other. And so, yeah, looking at sort of unearthing these and then unpacking them somewhat. And so this project Common Life came about, which Penny, you've kind of mentioned. And I don't want to repeat too much some of the things that you've mentioned around Ubuntu, which I think particularly from Waza was super helpful with Pierre's contribution. But I think just to add a little bit to that conversation, one of the things that I think was really vital about the contribution of Ubuntu is that the concept is I am because you are. So it's not even just a collective well-being in the sense of my well-being is dependent on your well-being, but my very existence is dependent on your existence. And one of the things that we found in the Common Life project, looking into African philosophical practices and traditions, was also this concept of life force, which understood life force as part of all living things, including things that maybe some epistemes don't think of as living, such as rocks and land. And that this concept of life force really links human beings to everything else. And I know there's going to be a session on the more than human at another point, but I think these kinds of interlinkages and intersectionalities were what was really exciting in the conversations between us, and finding a lot of similarity, I think, but then also, being able to identify those specific differences. Yeah, I think that's what I can add, unless there's anything I'm missing.
Thank you so much, Molemo. Thank you, because you bring a lot with regards to how to contextualize commons, and particularly in reference to Ubuntu as well. So we have more, obviously, to reflect upon, and we have two more storytellers, Marion and Feza, to put more into this discussion, which I will again share the screen just for a second to direct us to the next question that came for Marion. Basically for Marion, were two. Obviously you can combine them. That was with regards to Senegal, but also with regards to specifically the festival Afropixel Edition 8, to guide us into how can we see the commons and commoning practices within the Senegalese context.
Hi everybody, nice to see you again all. First, I will try to, I don't know if I really will answer your question, what I want to say is that similar to Platohedro, commons are really rooted in a Thiossane project, because since the beginning in 2002, it's in the DNA of Thiossane, who, like Platohedro, work around open source technology, art, new media with communities. And I can say that from 2002 to 2012, we was practicing commons with the neighbors, artists, students, hackers, but without naming it. And at the end of 2011, with the World Forum in Dakar, that some partners from Spain and France came and spoke to us about the Eleanor Ostrom concept, the tragedy of commons and commons. And it was the 10 years of Thiossane, and I think that our institution needs to always have a new cycle, and it really resonates, and we started to think of what really means the commons in the Senegalese society through art perspective. And that's how we launched in May 2012, the third edition of our festival Afropixel, called Creation, Culture and Knowledge in Commons. And we invited, before that, following a series of breakfast in commons held in Thiossane since January, with artists to understand how, in the Senegalese context, to question ourselves, this concept of commons in Africa and the role of artistic creation. We went to the third edition of the festival, where we invited Achille Bembe, Simon Jamy, Kansi Ken Bougoul, writer, activists from Yanama and Felvin, to speak about the responsibility of artists in the defense or promotion of the commons, and how the artists can help to reimagine the commons in a city like Dakar. I think that we was more working in an urban context of Dakar. The commons resonate in to propose a reflection and on the role of artists defending the commons. And it's how we was invited to go to Colombia by Gertrude for this new AC adventure that was starting in Colombia. And it's open for us a new window. And we decided in AC to go further than reflection, but to really practice the commons after this big edition in our context, by opening a school of commons around a garden, because there are no more green space in the city of Dakar, no place for children to play, and around a Fab Lab. So we opened the first Fab Lab in Dakar in 2014, the School of Commons with the Fab Lab and the Garden of Resistance and we invited for the fourth edition of Afropixel, Garden of Resistance, to Fernando Arias from Masarte Massaction, also to really practice with the community, girls from the social center, the commons in our context. So I can say that it's a progressive way, and it was a first step to really do it. And it was an utopia we have done because of AC also, because I can then not say that is angelic, the common is that we really had to fight, and it's a reality to practice the commons. To speak about commons is very easy, but to practice in a city like Dakar, and more, if we speak now, I have time to speak of the reality and the sustainability of commons in the global world today, the sense of what we do. So we made around this school many workshops, many discussions, Fab Lab activities with high-tech, low-tech that really resonate. And that's how we came to go very quick to this Afropixel 8 version, online version of the festival, that really, with the COVID, the commons really get all their sense. I forgot to say that, yes, as Molemo remind, we invited in 2016 Dienaba and Emmanuel Cherel two researchers to evaluate with the neighbors what he was doing. She's Ndianaba, she's at the University Cheikh Anta Diop. She's a sociologist and a psychologist, and she was interested of the care, the question of the city, and we started to, she evaluate to see also the people who lived around the School of the Commons, and she made interview, and so 2018, I think Afropixel 8 was during the COVID. It was the opportunity to really play the commons and question the commons online with at Collaboratory ecosystem, with some discussion that you can find online, some Agora, but also with artist residents online. Alex was part of it, artists from Waza, and it was really interesting to experiment the commons like this. And before that, I can say that with Molemo also in 2001, we received the Common Life workshop in Dakar, and we started to do with AC and with Denaba a series of 12 videos asking activists, artists, and neighbors how to revive the commons in the context of Dakar, and how to name the commons, all that. It's a pity that Dienaba is not here, but you can find all the process and the videos online. I don't want to be too long, but I could answer the question after.
Thank you, Marion. Thank you so much for taking us into Afropixel, Thiossane, and of course the School of Commons, which we didn't mention before, which is quite important to think about, that how you started your own interest and work on.
Well, I think it's how we started and how we continue
yes.
in today's situation. That's what
something
I get
maybe
interested.
Something to reflect, Marion. I think that's where are we now later on with the reflections. That would be fantastic. And we have our last storyteller, Feza. Just give me again a second, Feza, to share with the audience the question you had to respond to, or to reflect, basically. Yep, this is the question. Just a second for the audience to look, which was specifically about Lubumbashi, and Waza's response to the commons. So the floor is yours. I'm just going to stop sharing right now. And
Thank you. To respond to the first part of the question, which is what did it mean to speak of commons in the context of Lubumbashi? For us, speaking of the commons required us to distinguish between these terms, le bien commun in French, and the commons project itself, because there was that connection of the word, but we did not really mean the same thing when we went into the project to visit people and question them about what is the commons into their everyday life. So establishing this distinction allowed us to obtain responses that were truly aligned with the commons project itself. And the second meaning derived from the places that we wanted to visit and question them about the commons, how they experience it. So we selected the church, the markets, or we also selected some places which are, like, for example, the simple organization of bathroom management in a yard where you have 7 tenants. How do they manage that place from outsiders, and also like within the community itself, like within the yard itself. And we also visited a miners dwelling camp, and the new ways mining companies attempt to give back to society in exchange for their presence, such as providing water, electricity, which ultimately must be managed by communities living in the neighborhood of the concession where the mining is being extracted. Or we also revisit the informal solidarity among artisanal miners. So the core question was, how do these dynamics inform us as an art center situated in the art of all these actions, like how does it inspire us and teach us? Because that was the most interesting part. Waza was transitioning. It was Power to the Commons project came after COVID-19 and everything was changing. The funding were being cut and the administration team was also changing. Like I joined the team when just after COVID-19, and so it was like a lot of transitioning. And how did we position ourselves? How could we see us within, like, amid all those changements? So one of the things that among a lot of things that we learned and that we could, if we have to go back and then tell a story today, we could say that to speak of the commons was co-creation of community rules and norms, like organizing regular assemblies, forums where all stakeholders, like in terms of Waza, artists, researchers, local residents, can discuss and agree on how shared resources, spaces found, tools are used and managed. So we had our first, not first, but it was a kind of workshop, which was facilitated by Pierre Kaenga. That workshop, we always call it a discursive workshop, where we talked with people from the ecosystem, artists, and the administrative team. Like we sat and we discussed how can we implement or empower each other. For example, we have this space which is being offered by Waza, like it's free access. Artists can come and they can have the space, they can create, they can meet other people, they can strengthen their network. But how does Waza get back from that practice of getting its space for free to the artists? Like, how can each of us benefit but also give back? Those were some of the questions that we discussed, because we learned through, like you already introduced, the Chebachani philosophy. We also learned the Ujama within the community that we went to visit, most especially the churches. So all those philosophy started to be part of our questioning and on how we as an art center can also get back from the things that we give to the community. And another thing was mutual support networks. Like, to speak of the commons required a necessity for change. Like we observe from the community that practical knowledge of building solidarity and empower members is mutual. It is not only a one way, like I already said, like giving back and getting back from the community. So the thing is also encouraging informal collaborations. And after COVID-19, we had the Kirata project, which also allowed artists not only to focus on collaborations within, but also outside. How can we empower each of us, or how can each artist empower another artist, but without being in a structure? This, so to say that. And for that, we had a lot of discussions between curators, between artists and artists, and also kind of creating a space where people can just discuss freely, meeting and having exchange around their project. Another thing is shared resource management. The space is offered to everyone, but how can we develop and maintain that shared space? How can we create inventories of shared tools and materials and establish a first system, borrowing, maintaining, replenishing them, all those questions, like between Waza and the artist. And so all those questions became part of our language and our practices. We also learned from the community conflict resolution mechanism, which for us became like a way to promote open dialogue and regular check-in to surface issues early and resolve them collectively. And we are recently working, and we're still working with Brain, like the Maramba project, and we've been working on that, and that project also is part of what the Power to the Commons help us to implement within our community? How can we have a space where we can come, discuss, but learn, and also have local communities being involved? That was something very important, and also most especially important for Curata project. Like, how can local community be involved into these projects? How can they benefit from the project that we are implementing as an art center? Well, so these actions and all these philosophies that we learn during the project itself help us to get an easy transition, but also to redefine the way we structure our art center, most especially in this moment where we're trying to implement a governance where we do not depend mainly on funding, but we also as a center can also get back from the community that we invest into from different ways. It might be sharing knowledge, it might be getting a strong network for artists, but also helping artists to get their ways. All those practices counted so that we can like discuss, strengthen ideas, but also to question how do we not only give without receiving, but it's a two-way relationship where you give and then you also receive, as the philosophy Chevachani itself said it clearly. So I think I will stop there and maybe respond and speak more when we have questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Feza. Thank you, because you ended up very well with reflecting what's happened since part of the Commons, the last, let's say, meetup. And I will share now the questions that we can reflect together. So it's not kind of a circle, because we are obviously online. So anyone who would like from the storytellers to jump in and, contribute to the discussion, that would be great. So let's say we have 10 minutes for that. So I'm conscious of the time, but let's see how it goes. Give me a second to share again the screen. So these are the 4 questions with regards to where are we now, and to with regards to part of the Commons, but commoning in particular in these turbulent times we live in, with various conflicts and wars and genocides around us. So it would be good to think back into the Commons through this lens, but also to reflect on where we are located with regards to the Commons. So these are the 4 questions. You can, I don't know, because when I share the screen, I cannot see who has the hands up.
Okay.
So you can do that. So you
Don't worry, I can manage it.
Yeah, fantastic. So anyway, if you can do that, Lucy, I can then mute myself. So because we are in the same room with Alex, so not to get an echo back. So, yep. Yes, I have to mute. Just give me a sec.
It's okay now. Okay, but I have a little text about the reflection, the closing reflection about your question. So, working across Latin America and Africa deeply transformed our understanding of commoning. It's moving from being a beautiful idea to become something very alive, a practice of building together through difference across time zone and despite all the barriers. We begin to see it commonly not just a value, but as a rhythm, like a pulse, like a heart, through the way we listen, the way we care for each other's stories, and the way we hold space for what can now yet be named. This word thought as the commons are built not only through the action but through the shared vulnerability. the relationship that emerged through the Power to the Commons were not just a professional connection. They feel like a kinship, building trust, curiosity, and willingness to work together without knowing exactly where we can arrive. There, these were relationships that slow us down, made us more attentive and more open. At the same time, this is part of the process that remain fragile, invisible, or still unfounded. For example, the emotional labor to sustain translocal connection, the time and care it taken to truly understand one another, often go unrecognized. Also, the need to address power imbalance, including language, asset, or funding, require continuous attention. They are no obstacles, but they are called to go deeper, to care more intentionally. And yet, even with those tensions, many elements from Power to the Common remain alive in our world today. We carry ritual of listening, practice of checking in with each other, question that help us notice what being excluded or overlooked. We carry the remind that knowledge must circulate and no one builds alone. The most important, we continue nurture relationship that resist extractive individuals' logics. Relationship where we are not trying to scale or deliver, but simply to stay present, to hold the commons as a space to share becoming. So when we say power to the common, we'll also say power to slow, to the collective, to the unfinished. Power to a story we hold together. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Alex, for this reflection, actually, and thinking carefully with the questions. I don't know if anyone else has anything else to add, to reflect, or to go beyond those questions. It doesn't need to be the questions, it's just a kind of a leading prompt. Something we haven't covered, or you, from what we've done so far, or where you are right now with the commons practices. I mean, I really liked, I have here, I really liked how Feza ended your description of saying about the question of funding, that where are we with the question of funding, and how work has been done from Waza with the artists through networks of solidarity, and what that means, what is the reciprocity. So I don't know if you can tell us a little bit more to understand how that is being experienced from your side.
Well, I have to also admit that it has been it will be 1 year since I did not quit, but I left Waza. I am currently in the US for a master program, and there are some other things that are kind of a little bit above. So when I left, I was like we were working on that. We were discussing. We were having those discussions a lot, and I don't know if we found a common ground where we had this, but those were the discussions, and we were kind of like in conversation. I'll say that. So, but yeah, because I can tell more and I cannot say things without having any feedback, or we did not talk about it when I was lastly speaking with Patrick, so I can say more. But I would like to say something about resisting extractivism, because these last days we talked a lot about extractivism in like extractivism in the mining, but also extractivism in the knowledge, because Waza has been working on the non-extractive knowledge practice in the museum. And that is something that we are discussing, most especially when we speaking about restitution. How do we get the community into this process? Because it is not only about the museums conversation, but it's also about the communities from where those artworks were taken. It is not only about art centers and museums in the European countries where those artworks were taken, but it's also about the communities and their voices which matter. So we've been discussing a lot about this non-extractive museum practice. And I remember that the last project we worked on, we had communities, representatives of the masks or the artifacts where those from which those artifacts were taken, and we got them to Waza, and they came into reflection. They told us what they think about this process of restitution and how they imagine it could be, or what. So they just gave their opinions, which really help a lot in terms of us avoiding the same pathway that I would say the Westerners took in taking those objects. So we don't want to do or reproduce the same thing and not inviting local communities into the process. That was something that I can say it's aligned with the commons, because we are resisting the extractive. And the other question, sorry. Well, I think if I have some more to add, I will. Thank you.
Yep. Marion, I don't know if you have anything else to comment. Unfortunately, Molemo needed to go, so but she left a website for us to look at.
No, but it's interesting what Feza told about funding and extractivism and all this. For me, the commons in the actual context is question of resistance. We speak about garden of resistance, power, from power to the pixel. It was a Fakukezi edition in South Africa. We went to power to the commons. So it's really a question of, as I say, it's not question of romanticize the commons. For me, commons is a fight, and we need for structure to have a team, to have people, to work with community every day. As you see now, Feza, she's abroad, Patrick is abroad, but every day you need to really work with community. We have done this for 10 years, every day, every weekend with the community, sharing knowledge. And it's more sharing practice, sharing experimentation. And it's now at Thiossane, we are out to be sustainable on this without the fundraising system, you know, to fundraise. And in AC, we have spoken and tried to experiment a lot this shifting paradigms with funders. Without AC and this common pot system and this, it was not possible to practice the commons. And for me, as Feza says, it's how we practice with our communities. It's good to go at Documenta. Sorry, I will be a bit, for me, I'm a bit, it's not anger, but it's to be realistic. It's good to be at Documenta and with ourselves to speak about commons. It was very important for AC to share, to understand what means in South Africa with Molemo ecosystem, also what means in the Anglophone part, what means the commons, to understand also very important to have this Buen Vivir perspective, to have feedback on what we was doing, to think of this, all this. But what is important is to share it with our communities, and to share with communities needs funds, you know. For the garden, we still pay without funds. We still find strategies today to pay the water, to pay a gardener, to pay. Today we all have to find strategy to continue the commons, but it's very difficult. So we have to be at the local and at the international level. And for me, to receive an artist from or Alex working on the money, electronic money, or to really experiment is the best way to to make understand my community, or when we receive somebody from Indonesia, from Rangrupa, or to really practice with the girls of the community is the most important. It's a really tangible way to practice the commons and to share with my community. Recently, we also received Indian artists, and it's for me. So the question is, yes, now we have to be more resistant, powerful, strategic, and especially in this more and more capitalist. It was difficult before, but now in the tech startup ecosystem, economy of creative economy, all this concept to speak about open source and sharing knowledge, and it really needs to. We need our strategy is also to work with researchers, with population. It's not so easy, but to find. And that's my question at the moment, how we sustain and how we can continue.
Okay.
That's my point.
Thank you, Marion, thank you. I'm conscious of the time, and I see that there is already a question from the audience. I think maybe we can move to the audience. I ask if we can have, let's say, 5-10 minutes more, because we started late due to the technical issue. So feel free to stay, or if you cannot, you can leave. But at least we can finish with including the audience. So I can read the question. Yes, there is one by Eleni, where the question is, how can the infrastructure of a city be a motive to empower the commons and the sense of community?
I have a question.
Yes.
At this moment, can we have a conversation like everyone with
Yes.
everyone?
Yes.
Okay. Because I wanted to jump in.
Yes. Yes.
When I read the question from Eleni, I was asking myself, how can the lack of infrastructure of a city maybe be a motive to empower the commons? And I connected to the lack of infrastructure or the difficulties with infrastructure with some story from Platohedro Manga Libre. We are being a bit of maybe redundant with Platohedro stories.
Lucy,
But
just a parenthesis. Can you explain what is the Manga Libre? Because
yeah,
apart from us,
it's a community space that a community garden at an abandoned space that since 2011, I think, it started the revitalization of that space. It became a community garden with several years of working together in a neighbor that was lacking community parks or even parks for people to get together, to have a time together. So I would say the starting point in this example was the lack of infrastructure, maybe, and while it was combined with a culture of parchar that is like people really enjoy here coming together, like having some talk or having some time to connect. So I think that was one motivation of an initiative that started from Platohedro, but was connected with the wish of neighbors around to do something together, to dream about what would that space look like, and a collective building of it. And as Marion was I was agreeing totally with Marion that at the same time that it becomes a collective thing and a community thing, it needs a lot of support from an engine, let's say. While we also wish that everybody empowers itself and become like a member of the initiative, it's very clear that some things to flourish needs a lot of movement and everyday fight, like Marion was saying. So yeah, just a small story that I connected. I don't know if I totally answered you, but I just resonated with the infrastructure thing, mostly connecting with the lack of it, and also as I think it was already mentioned, when, or at least in this group, while we speak about the commons, we speak about infrastructure and much more than infrastructure, like the other, or the emotional infrastructure that ties us or that connect us. So it is not always starting from the water or from the lack of or the need of something, but it's also connected with that, but also with the other emotional aspects of we like to be together and do things together. Yeah, I will stop here.
Yeah, I mean, I think that follows very well, Lucy, from the idea that it's basically, when we say about infrastructures, we talk about relational infrastructures, and commoning is about relational infrastructures, as well as people as infrastructure. I mean, not to go to theory, but Simon Abdulmalik Simon, has talked about people as infrastructure. So as you see in situations when you see flourishing of commoning practices or commons are when there are no infrastructures, with the example, for instance, of the Zapatistas, that basically how did they come and think through these processes is because of the lack of official or formal infrastructure, as we call it, but it is through relational infrastructure, through assemblies, etc., that moments of crisis, they come in through mutual aid and solidarity to form and strengthen the commons, as also Feza described it in the example of the ecosystem of Waza, when that happened with solidarity coming and forming this all the type of infrastructure. So yes, I don't know if we responded to the question, and I don't know if there is any other question. So, okay, I see that Feza has your hands up. Maybe you want to, step in, yes.
I just wanted to add one more thing to the question, which is interesting. Like in the Lubumbashi case, how can the infrastructure of a city be more? Yeah, in Lubumbashi, it's the other way around. Yeah, before, for example, I'll take two cases. One is Maramba camps, which was a place where all the mining workers, when during the colonization period, when we had those mining workers and places where they could live. So they had that architecture which facilitates people to live in a place. They could communicate and have those interactions. But then when those companies went through bankruptcy and they closed, and people had to, the state could not manage those houses anymore. They gave them to people. So people started to build fences around their houses, so that how the interaction stopped and everybody became like closed, and they started to live individually into their places, and it changed the perspective of that camp, and people started to be more and more distant from others. It really changed, which is like, of course, infrastructure can affect the way we see the commons, and it can, it's really, I think, for us, in the sense of coming from a country where community is always something, and with all the things going on, it does really impact and influence the way we see each other and the way we talk about the commons. And also, same thing when we as Waza Art Center propose a renovation plan for the basketball courts in the same Maramba camps. There is a small corner where people goes and people go there and they cultivate. It's like a common field. The space does not belong to anyone. It's a space that they elaborate. There is a basketball court, there is a football court, and people just hang around there. But people have managed to have a space where they cultivate, and I don't know how they manage that space. You just see that every season, every rainy season, people cultivate. And if we have to renovate that space, that corner should always be there, because it's a place where people come to get resources like food or economy, something like that. So these are the things that I can add to this question. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Feza. And I see the time that we are just, I think, 1:30. 1:30 basically where we are right now, meaning 6:30 GMT time, if I'm right. So maybe we can, if we don't have any other question from the audience, or if there is any other thoughts to share, the rest of you here, maybe slowly we can close. I don't know what the rest think. Yep. First of all, to thank you all as an individual, but also as member of the Power to the Commons, of feeding into this journey we started in 2019 and we continue. And I'm happy to see, I mean, how individual projects and people flourish within, but also the questions that bring the commons, because as Marion said, it's not to romanticize, because that problematize the commons and co-opt the commons, because it's about also cooptation and extractivism of the same words and concepts and making. So I know that Lucy's here to making a closing of the session, and thank you again. Do I need to share any slides again, Lucy, or no?
Yeah, maybe just a reminder that we will continue with these sessions.
Yes.
Every 2 weeks. There will be 1 week that will be like every 1 week. If you share the image, it will be clear. But you are totally invited to keep on joining this conversation, and we are like really interested in the collective sense making that we can do through these sessions. We are also harvesting. Tatiana is also harvesting the sessions. We will try to reflect afterwards about it. So yeah, yes, it's over there. We are meeting on Fridays. I think there will be another session on a Wednesday, but so far the next session will be, the last one. And so far the next session will be in 2 weeks in Fridays. So you can also invite people that you think could be interested on it. The form will be always open until we finish, and it's it just helps us to see like how many people are interested on these sessions, and to send a reminder on the Zoom link. The Zoom link will also be the same, so if you already have the message, you can keep on connecting, but we will send reminders because we know everybody is kind of busy and forget. So thank you so much for coming. It was a really enjoyable session, at least for me, and I'm very grateful also in the name of the AC School process and the Arts Collaboratory Network. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you very much.
Bye. Bye. Thank you. Bye all. Thank you so much.
The recording has stopped.
Okay, thank you. I just finished the recording. Do you want to stay a bit for comment? But finish the YouTube recording, please. I cannot hear you, Penny, but maybe you are in the...
Hi, Denise. Are you staying? Because we are finished the session, I think. I'm not sure. It's just we have Denise only here.
Yeah.
I don't know if she's... give me a sec.
I just removed her.
Yeah, okay, great. So it's just the three of us. And I don't know, it's Lina as well. I don't know. Arts Collaboratory, who is the third?
I think it's Juan.
It's Juan. Juan.
Are we